By the end of this video, I will have shared some clear strategies and perhaps more importantly, principles around how to create influence with your kids. Because influence is what it's about. If you want your child to become a thriving, happy, successful, independent person, it's like we can't make them be that way. And the best way that I've found to be able to mold young people so that they retain their own individuality and I create some positive influence is through a number of things that I'm going to share with you now. So let me share a story with you. Back when I was 22 and I graduated from college in Wisconsin, I moved to Oregon and I had this dream of living out west. I was desperate for work. I had a degree in math and physics and didn't know what to do with it. This was back in 2001. And I got hired for a program that worked with at-risk youth in the wilderness. Now, I probably shouldn't have been hired because I didn't have any experience, nor was I very good at it. And so what I tried to do was create influence with these young people who were really struggling. They had depression, anxiety, substance abuse issues, family issues. They were really, really struggling in their lives. And I really sucked at it. Let's be honest. I went in there and I was trying to help them. I was trying to share with them. I was giving them advice. I was like 22 or 23. I didn't really know anything about how to be mature or live a successful life. But they paid me and they hired me, and I really enjoyed being with these young people. But I was terrible at creating influence. Just terrible. Like, none of the kids really listened to me. I liked them and I felt kind of connected to them, but they were kind of like, yeah, this guy doesn't really know what he's talking about. After 6 months of working there, I was leading a group where I was encouraging people to share and we were talking about our feelings. And I don't remember what I said, but I remember saying something and everyone kind of looked up at me. And my supervisor, the lead guide who I was working with, looked over and he was like, nice job. And I was like, I have value. So I don't remember what I said, but then I remember continuing to work on that one thing that I did and how I created value in that moment. And this really started my journey of what has really defined who I am as a person and as an expert in working with families and young people. And it really comes down to creating influence. So how do we do that? I'll share with you my journey and some things that you can do and some things that you can take away and to create influence with your young people. Essentially, what I've molded myself to be is to make myself a compelling reason for someone to listen to, right? So what does that mean? Well, it's like, how do I be a person that inspires, that has them feel better, that has them laugh a little bit, that brings lightness to their lives? These are all things that are important to me, and I found that are really helpful for people who are struggling. I've become comfortable being transparent and vulnerable. One of the best ways that you can inspire your kids is to get comfortable being vulnerable. Vulnerability is compelling. Whenever you see shows or movies, the characters are always portraying some kind of a vulnerability, or the directors, the writers are always portraying some kind of a vulnerability or transparency that's expressed through a conflict, usually in the plot. So how can you become vulnerable and transparent in your life? That doesn't make them responsible for you, meaning you're not pouring your heart out to them and asking them for support and help all the time, every day of your life, but you are comfortable enough in yourself, secure enough in yourself to be vulnerable to a degree that it inspires, because vulnerability inspires when it's communicated in the right kind of way, meaning you're not making that person responsible for how you're feeling, for your vulnerability. But there's old, archaic rule of parenting around you have to be strong. Being strong is being comfortable being vulnerable. That's the definition of strength, and it always has been, and it should be. That's where courage comes from, is being afraid to do something and doing it anyway. That's the definition of courage. So one piece is, how do you be comfortable with your vulnerability? Be comfortable and transparent with your own insecurities. without making someone like this young person responsible for you, right? Modeling doesn't work. Modeling creates well-behaved robots and well-programmed robots. So all that to say, don't make it a point to behave a certain way. Put your focus on how you're being, how you're feeling. If you struggle with being connected to your feelings, spend time doing that, becoming more aware of yourself. Because that's how you create influences from the inside out, not the outside in. Right? The old do as I say, not as I do thing. I mean, that was old when it started. And it's even more old now. Our culture is at a point where it's fostering and it's appreciative of authenticity. And authenticity means that how we feel is aligned with how we act and what we say, right? And it also means that we take responsibility for ourselves and we don't blame other people for our circumstances and for how things occur to us, meaning our circumstances are up to our creation. That's another compelling way to live our lives, is how do we live our lives in a way that we exude this responsibility, that we are totally responsible for our life and we don't blame anyone or anything for how we are. I mean, that's an inspiring way to live. I mean, it's a confronting way to live for some people, but gosh, for young people who have this fire inside that want to create or they want to do what they want to do, I mean, live in a way that you are fully responsible for yourself, your circumstances, and that you are ultimately the one who creates your life, right? That's another great way to have it be a compelling person. So far, we've talked about being vulnerable and comfortable with vulnerability, 2, being responsible and being the creator of our life and living that way, not teaching that way, but living that way as a teaching. And thirdly, be strong, be reliable, practice unshakability. And in fact, one of the best ways to become unshakable in terms of yourself is to recognize when you are shakable. It goes back to what I share a lot, which is that the most secure person is the one who is most comfortable with their insecurities, right? It doesn't mean not having insecurities. It means being comfortable with what our weaknesses are and being equally as comfortable sharing about our strengths as our weaknesses. So all of this comes back to becoming a strong person, becoming strong, becoming reliable, becoming emotionally reliable, making yourself emotionally available for your kids as much as possible. And what that means sometimes is saying, I'm not emotionally available right now, right? So it might mean being more emotionally intelligent, emotionally expressive, being aligned, all of these pieces that make you a strong person, that your kids can push against you, push against your boundaries, push against your personality, and you kind of are just there. You exist. You're strong. You're a foundation. They come to you with problems. They come to you with successes, and it's being strong doesn't mean that you're not emotional, right? In my definition of what I've seen the most influential parents be is when they are strong in a way that they cry, that they share their frustrations, they share their sadness, they share their victories. And perhaps the most important aspect of creating influence is being on a dedicated path of transformation. So what does this mean? If you want your kids to grow and to do things that are uncomfortable so that they eventually become successful, happy, independent, make sure you're doing the same thing. Make sure you're on a dedicated path of transformation, of evolution, of growth, that you're doing things that are uncomfortable for you, that move you forward in your life, that open yourself up to your heart more and more, where you become more effective, more relaxed, more peaceful, more joyful. And that every day, every week, every month, every year is a continued opportunity for you to become more and more expressive. I mean, what's more inspiring than that? And if you want to influence your kids, become an inspiration, right? So let's recap. 1, get comfort with being vulnerable. 2, be as responsible as you can as the creator of your life. 3, be strong, be reliable, be transparent. Being strong means being comfortable with vulnerability. Don't blame your kids for the weaknesses that you have in your personality. And number 4, dedicate yourself to a path of transformation. I know it. If you practice these 4 things, you will create more and more influence with your kids. All my best.